Hey everybody, Allison Gardner here. I wanted to share with you an experience that I had recently, and kind of what it is that I'm doing to try and figure out how to be okay with it after the fact. I was in a conversation with someone a while ago, and they asked how is depression different than just regular discouragement, or how is it painful? Like, why is it so destructive? Why does it take someone down so far? And as I was pondering on that, I was thinking about the case study that I know the closest and the best, and I was thinking about the struggle that my husband and a couple others those that have struggled with depression that have come into my life, and what their struggle was and why it was so hard for them. And what came to my mind, I think that stood out the most, is that depression reminds you of every regret you've ever had and tells you that every one of those regrets means you're a failure. And that every missed opportunity that you have ever missed means that you are an awful person and you will never catch up and you will never come out even with anyone else. And that it gets so loud and so noisy, and the negative voices are so painful that there is no way for you to contradict those voices, and there is no way for you to cope, because it's just so loud, and that no amount of just positive thinking can make those voices go away, and no amount of outside encouragement makes those voices stop. And others, they might have a different description of depression. That's totally fine. That's just in my outside perspective of it, that is what I have observed. And sometimes that observation gets very up and close and personal for me when those people whom I care about so much come to me and try and figure out how to not feel like a failure anymore. Try and find some hope and some assurance that they're okay. And what is so painful is that part of the depression that I have seen up close is that a lot of what they say is true, but it's also been twisted and has become very painful. And so how do I combat true statements when the statement itself is true, but the emotion attached to the statement has been pulled so out of whack? And especially when that statement hits very close to home for me. It was rather painful when this person that I love came and just said that they were a failure, and that they were too late in life to ever be good enough, and that they were a failure, and there was nothing that I could say to stop that or help that or reverse that. And it just loomed so large in that moment of how painful that truth felt, and how painful that reality was for them, and how far that had taken them, and that I was a little bit afraid about where that thought process would take them. And I mentioned in a previous video how, for me, depression is just not them going through this hard time. It's an energy that sort of descends on my house, or descends on the environment that I'm in with that person, and then it can weigh me down and be very distressful for me, even though it's not directly in my head. I can still feel it, and I can still sense that energy. And so that in that conversation, that energy just came swooping in and just pounced on me. And I had the thought, I just did a video about having hope. How do I have hope? And what struck me was that I have hope because I don't take it all in one big chunk. I don't take what they say as an ultimatum, because that's another part of depression that they're struggling with, is every thought they have is the ultimate everything. And that it's so overwhelming because it feels like the rest of eternity is stretching out in front of them. And so my best chance for hope is to not have that, to not try and take it all in one big bite, but to break it down into pieces and just realize that I just have to get through that conversation. and then I just get to get through another conversation tomorrow. And then I get to hold on to some positive things and count my gratefuls and go in prayer and do positive things that fill me up, so that if the conversation comes up again, I get to have the conversation again. Because what I've noticed is a lot of coping with depression is having the same conversation, positive conversation, and being consistent. Because even if they don't believe it the first 15 times, they might believe it the 16th time. And so if I'm feeling stressed out and freaked out by every one of those conversations leading up to it, then by the time we get to the 16th conversation, I can't have it. But if I've taken every conversation as its own piece, if I take each interaction as its own thing, then I can be more positive and I can be more hopeful. Because in a world where they're seeing everything, I get to just see one thing, and I get to be an assurance in that one thing, and I get to be a positive light and hope in that one thing. And so if you're in a place where you are supporting someone that is struggling with this, I would encourage you to think about ways that you can just break it down into one thing. What is one thing you can do to refill your take, and what is one thing that you can do to support that person? And don't think about, oh no, how are we going to survive this for the next 10 years? That's not the point. The point is, how do we do this the best that we can for the next time? And then what faith can we do to reassure us and strengthen us for that one time? Because there is a lot of power in doing things one at a time instead of trying to make big leaps. Thank you for joining me. And I hope if you have questions, if you want to make comments, please do so below. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.